Hello, my name is Brian White, and I'm here to talk to you about how process costing can affect Starbucks at a corporate level. Let us go, shall we? Oh, there you all are! We chose Starbucks to cover because everyone really likes coffee, and Starbucks is a coffee company that is recognized all around the world. You know, we are not covering it from the standpoint of individual branches because from a corporate level, they sell over 50 trillion cups of coffee every year. Though I'm not one of them because I have other ways of keeping my energy up, you know what I'm saying? So now that you know what Starbucks is, let's take a look at what process costing is. According to this slide right here, process costing is a method for collecting and assigning manufacturing costs to the units produced. Now in the example shown on the screen, it tracks a given process for producing a product to a finished good. You start with raw materials, preparation, then the roasting, finally packaging, and then you got yourself a finished good. Now within each process, different costs are shown for each one depending on how much they cost, such as direct labor, indirect labor, direct materials, and indirect materials. And there's also other costs, but I can't really go into them because they're a bit over my head. So now let's ask the question. Should Starbucks use more process costing? Yes. Because as you see, process costing is much more suited for keeping track of departments or groups rather than detailed information on single products. Now this can be applied to Starbucks very easily as it can keep track of the planning processes of planning how much coffee needs to be made and how many overall cups and whatnot Starbucks needs on a corporate level to keep track of how much they need stuff for their branches. And also it keeps track of their sourcing processing costs, which means of where they all want to have their plans of making stuff, such as in other countries, which is where they grow a lot of the coffee, or even some in South Carolina where they just put one a few years ago. Also, they keep track of making and delivery costs, but I don't think I need to explain those at all because it's pretty easy. If you don't know what those mean, please drop out of the class. Now that we've covered process costs and what they are, let's take a look at how process costing will affect fixed and variable costs. I can't do this. I can't do this. It's too hard. It's too hard. I like pills 'cause they are yummy. I will put them in my tummy. Now, when it comes to fixed costs in process costing, the weighted average method of process costing is often used for fixed costs, as the fixed costs are averaged and applied evenly to each unit produced. Now, when this applies to Starbucks, there are many major fixed costs, like any company, such as factory, the rents and the mortgages for the many different buildings they have, and the salaries for their employees, advertisements, depreciation expense, and supplier contracts. And of course, they have more than 27,000 locations worldwide as of 2017. And the fixed costs do vary per location because, different places have different costs of living. It makes perfect sense, Like in California, where I'm from, it's very, very, very expensive there. That's why I moved here, because it's cheap and I could just sell drugs for money. All right, here I am with variable costing expert, Theo Gallivan, and he's going to teach you about variable costing at Starbucks. Go ahead, Mr. Gallivan.
So when you're talking about variable costing at Starbucks, there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
First of all, costs can vary on the quantity of beans processed, so that means depending on the amounts of beans that are processed at each individual Starbucks, this can determine what the cost at that Starbucks can be for those individual sizes and those types of coffee.
Yeah.
As well, there are increases in the different seasons that products come out, because as the products come out, those seasons, they become more popular, and as demand is up, the cost is also up.
That's true. That's true. Very good. And then, there's a lot of also more variable costs.
Right,
Yeah.
so when we look at those other variable costs, we have to think of all the ingredients that go into these Starbucks drinks, the raw materials, which could include the coffee beans, the plastic cups, the lids, the shipping of sending all of those materials into the Starbucks, the labor, which of course is the barista wages which work at these particular Starbucks, and the taxes that come with these drinks and with the goods that's needed to make these drinks.
Definitely, definitely. And how would you put more control over the variable costs?
Well, there are different methods that you could use. First of all, you could use less caffeine, which could mean that there are fewer coffee beans, which would affect the price of making these coffee beans and importing them into the Starbucks. You could work with other variable costs, because when you're working with these variable costs, it makes the prices cost less, because you're going to have more goods coming in, and that determines the amount of shipping that you would have to do, which of course determines the amount of price that you're going to have to use.
That's true.
Lastly, you have to be cautious to not do this over and over, because if you do, it'll result in poorer quality of the products, because you can only do these type of variable costs a certain amount of times before having to change it up.
That's true. Thank you, Mr. Gallivan. You got to take into account this relates to process costing, because relating each one directly to a process and controlling the process itself allows us to control variable costing in such a way. So thank you very much. Here, have a drink. You did good, kid. All yours. It's all yours. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gallivan.
You're a straight white male.
I'm a straight white male. It's like,
That's so funny.
look, I'm just gonna say this for having like 4 sisters. It just it'll just leak out. Everything will just leak out. They're not on their period. They're not on their period every day.
Into their clothes?
All right. Now that that's over, let's give a brief overview of why process costing works so well in this case. Well, the first reason, obviously, is because this is from a corporate level. And because it's from a corporate level, they can easily group the different processes into different categories. As there is minimal overlap, because there's a very diverse set of processes in what Starbucks sells. There's some overlap in shipping. However, in the different kinds of foods, there's very minimal overlap. Like, there's not the same kinds of ingredients in, like, coffee is in a sandwich. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing sticky about process costing. So, in conclusion,
That one's covered in shit.
Starbucks can you utilize process costing effectively due to the nature of the business, the market, and products. You benefit from the process costing by grouping to show how profits relate to each process. Creates much more control on the variable costing system and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's all I got. I'll just roll the credits now, if we could. And, yeah, I'll just key here. The credits roll. Watching anime with a bunch of weeds, out of control. Look at that. Look at that. What? She's controlling it. So go with it.
I guess the password would be all that anime. All that anime.
I know what his password is. His password's easy. What? What are you on about?
No, we're just like it's a Madoka match.
Madoka match.